Hello, this is Lyle with Optimize Profitability Podcast. Today I'm here with Joe and Jasmine Mims, and they're both entrepreneurs and they're married. I don't know about you, but being married to an entrepreneur is its own world. You can ask my wife because she's not an entrepreneur. But they've been married just over a year, and they've got some amazing things they've done in their lives. And I've just kind of worked with them a little bit, and I'm excited to hear all the things that's going on in their lives. Today, we're going to talk about what it takes to be married as entrepreneurs. So tell us your story, guys. How did each of you become an entrepreneur individually?
So funny thing is we actually started entrepreneurship together. Our stories were actually separated at first. So the first half before we got to entrepreneurship, both of us, we were getting out of high school and we were just following that same old path everybody thinks you're supposed to, go to school, get a good job and all that. And we knew that we couldn't pay for college. We weren't confident our families could pay for college. So we ended up taking matters into our own hands, and we joined the military so that they could pay for college.
Oh, wow.
At the time, we still didn't know each other, but we were only about 30 minutes away in distance. So when we went to basic training, our buildings were like right next to each other. We still didn't know each other. And then when we got home, we didn't really know each other then because we were at the same unit in the Army Reserves. But then as soon as we got home from basic training, they deployed us to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, which is actually where we met and then started dating. Wow. And the deployment was horrible, but when we got home, we thought that we were going to live this American dream. We were going to have, the white picket fence and great jobs and all that. And we found out that wasn't the case. So again, we had to take matters into our own hands. I finished college, and Joe, he was, do you want to tell that part?
Yeah, basically with my situation, because of some very kind of fine print things, the military didn't necessarily fund my schooling the way that they funded hers. And also, for me, I just wasn't as engaged in school as I thought I was going to be, because I had did all this work to get free school. And then I started going to school, and then it's like, oh, this isn't fun. And it's like, I remember sitting in class one day, I was like, man, I got 3.75 more years of this. It was like, I just can't imagine really doing this. And I think it was the prereqs that kind of did it for me. But really, I was just really floating around. I think Jasmine was very focused on what she wanted to do, what she wanted to achieve in life, her path, and what that looked like. At one point in time, I had no idea what I wanted to do or who I wanted to be at all. And I do remember we had saved quite a bit of money from the deployment, but obviously that was dwindling because it was hard for us to find work and stuff. And I remember driving past this homeless person, but it just wasn't any type of homeless person. It was a homeless veteran. Oh, wow. And then something clicked in my mind, and I was like, oh, I thought there was something always wrong with those guys. Maybe they had PTSD or maybe they weren't functional for whatever reason. Right. But what I realized is that you can be a totally functional, hardworking human being and end up in that exact same situation. So I knew that I had to make a change there. And that's when I think Jasmine had bought a whole bunch of books when we got home. And one of the books was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I was like, well, I've done all this for money and I don't know what I'm doing right now. So I'm gonna just read this book. And I started reading and I got hooked on that book. It was the first time that I had actually read a book in at least 4 years, because even in high school, I used to figure out ways to kind of study a book just enough to where I could pass the test, but I never would read the whole thing. Right. This was the first time in years I had read an entire book. And it just got me on this path of wanting to learn more about wealth accumulation and investing and business and all these different types of things. So I ended up being an insurance agent, which is it wasn't necessarily business ownership as I know it today, but it was my first kind of shot at learning how to interface with the customer, learning how to sell, how to present myself well, and all those different types of things. So it taught me a lot of the basics. And I think when she saw a lot of me doing a lot of that, she basically was like, oh, I want to do something like that too. So it was a whole bunch of trial and error. We became leasing agents first, and then we looked into wholesaling. And there was this whole journey that a lot of people don't know about, of us just trying and failing at so many different types of things. Right. But then we started buying businesses literally years later, after, you know, kind of getting some success here and there, but mostly failures. And it clicked. And, you know, as an entrepreneur, I feel like there's this day where I feel like when you're an entrepreneur, you know when something's made for you, when you have a good day and you enjoy it, but you can have a good day in anything and kind of enjoy that day. But you also have a bad day, but you still have this burning desire to be the best in the world at whatever it is that you're doing at that point in time. That's the point in time where I knew that us buying companies and scaling them were what we were actually meant to do.
Cool. And so what are some struggles you guys overcame going into entrepreneurship? Was it the learning factor, or was it more to it?
So in my opinion, I think learning is actually the fun part. Like that, I tell everybody I'm a lifelong student. I'm such a nerd. I don't know if I look like it, but I tell people, like, I am by far the biggest nerd you probably know. Like Marvel, I watch History Channel for fun sometimes. It's ridiculous. I'm weird. But learning's the fun part. The hard part, however, and I'll let you take one because I think I know what you'll say, but one of the other hard parts for me was dealing with the adversity from kind of certain family members or certain people in your sphere of influence not necessarily believing in you. And I think it's okay if somebody doesn't necessarily believe in you, but there's people who are sometimes close to you that will down talk you the most. And as an entrepreneur, you almost have to form this ability to be able to love somebody, but at the same time keep a certain amount of boundaries and distance to where they don't interfere with what you're trying to do. Because when you're brand new, that's when you're the most fragile. That's when you're the most sensitive. And all it takes is somebody to say the exact wrong things that you don't need to hear at the wrong time. Right. And you'll start basically that self-talk that they were given to you at first. They'll program it into your mind, and all of a sudden you'll be giving it to yourself. So it's almost like they'll have this program that's just running on autopilot of all the things that they would say, but now your brain is basically subconsciously saying it to yourself. So forming those boundaries were extremely hard, but also forming those boundaries, but keeping them to a point where you can still interact with this person. Because what you don't want to do is form boundaries that are so big and so strong, which is a mistake that I made, to where you just don't communicate with people that you actually care about anymore. And you actually ostracize yourself from other people. And that's something that you don't want to do. So keeping those healthy boundaries is something that's really, really hard to do. Somebody should write a book about it if they haven't.
Hey, called Boundaries, actually.
Oh, really? I got to read that one.
Yeah, I gave one to Matthew recently.
Oh, that's cool.
And I would say it was probably the consistency for me, because when we first got into entrepreneurship, he was kind of leading the way because he went the self-employment route first before we actually got into business ownership. And I remember there'd be times he's like listening to Tony Robbins in the car, and I'm just irritated because I'm like, I don't want to listen to this. I want to listen to music. I'm tired of hearing business stuff all the time. And I think it really came down to me not really knowing exactly what I wanted, and kind of just like seeing people on Instagram where it's like, oh, I just have to do a little bit and then I'll just be successful and I'll just be all great. So really defining what you want, and then like just writing down or really thinking about like the desire behind why you want what you want. Because once I knew my why, then the consistency wasn't a problem for me at all, because I actually work more than Joe now.
Yeah.
Good. So know your why and boundaries. Those are great points, guys. I appreciate it. So what are some wins you guys have in life right now? I know we're in a weird situation. We don't need to talk about what's going on and everything. That everybody knows. So what are some wins, some things that you're doing in your business and in your life? You talk about your marriage even, that's really helping you grow closer as a couple and help your business grow. What are some tips there?
Yeah, so some definite wins that we're having is just our abilities to kind of work on two separate projects at the same time. I do one part, Jasmine does the other part, and then we could come together, kind of debrief each other on what's been done, and then just kind of separate and come together at the end of each day. It's been a really, really good workflow for us because what we do now is like totally different in the business, but we still keep each other updated, and we're getting a lot done, way more done as opposed to us working on the same thing or something along those lines. So that's, in my opinion, a really huge win because, that's hard. That's a hard balance for a lot of people to achieve, but also being able to still achieve some growth in the businesses that we actually have. A lot of businesses are, their sales are declining, they're shut down, some are going bankrupt. And I'm blessed to be able to say that I'm still steadily, my businesses are still steadily growing throughout everything that's been going on right now. And I think it's partially because of you guys. And also, I think it's just honestly the grace of God as well. Because like at the end of the day, like I look at my business situation and I could have been so easily taken out, but I think there was definitely some divine intervention there for sure.
Yeah. So one win I've been getting lately is that Joe and I have been able to relax a little bit more. I guess like we're looking at a blessing in disguise for, all of 2020, because 2020 is just a ridiculous year. But it has given us the time to actually take a step back and breathe and have more conversation than we usually would have outside of business. Because when we started business, it was kind of just always business. We really didn't have a lot of personal time. And that was a little struggle of ours, but we've definitely gotten a lot of downtime this year to just sit back and enjoy each other.
Cool. That's a great word. And here's a big question I always ask people. If an entrepreneur is listening and they hear you guys are doing great as a couple and great as entrepreneurs, what's one tip you would give them that they can put in practice this week?
Yeah. So my tip, honestly, I think is a very, very unconventional, and it kind of piggybacks off of what Jasmine was just saying. But a lot of entrepreneurs have this idea that they're just going to hustle their way to success. And at the end of the day, my mom hustles. My dad hustles. Like a lot of people in my family, I mean, they have an unbelievable work ethic. Like my dad, like he was working one day, and Jasmine and I were with him the whole entire day, kind of helping him out. And Jasmine was just so surprised at how hard this man can actually work at his age. It's really incredible. But what I found is that there is a time and a place for rest, and a lot of people don't understand that rest is just as important, if not more important, than the actual work or the hustle. And I was watching this video the other day from I forgot who made the video, but Warren Buffett and Bill Gates was in it, and Bill Gates was talking about some of the things that he learned from Warren Buffett. And he said earlier on in his career, his schedule was always full. He had no free time ever. And then he was looking at Warren Buffett, and he was like, he'll look at his calendar and he's like, it's almost nothing in here. And Warren Buffett was saying, I give myself a lot of time to meditate and to think and to kind of just be bored from time to time. And I think creating that space to just think and even being bored at times gives the universe or God or whatever you believe in the chance to kind of bring ideas to you. Because if you're busy working on something, you can't contemplate on, bigger and better things. So I think allowing yourself a chance as an entrepreneur to rest and to think, and don't guilt trip yourself into thinking that you should be working. I think if you do that, you'll be so much more creative. There's times where I take time off, and when I come back to work, I'm unstoppable.
That's great. And I agree with that, because you have to allow the ideas and the vision to be birthed. And if you're so busy trying to do all the tidbit little things, you don't have time for that birthing, that processing in your brain to go. I keep telling Matthew, we need to just disappear for a week, he and I together, and just let the vision go, and see what happens.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Jasmine, what would you add? What's a tip you would give somebody that's an entrepreneur?
Well, for specifically like an entrepreneur couple, the tip that I would give is to take some time this week to reflect and maybe even journal if, journaling is your thing, and write down, like, what do you think that your strength is as a couple, and maybe even your weakness, but really focus on the strengths, because I noticed when we started in entrepreneurship, I would kind of get jealous of Joe sometimes, because I'd be like, well, everybody thinks he's so smart, and like nobody's talking to me, nobody's shaking my hand. And I really was looking at us like as individuals. Even when like we first got married, even though we've only been married for a year, but a couple months after we got married, I realized like, we're one, we're not two anymore. So I can't look at him and, think that's my enemy, and I shouldn't ever be jealous of him, because if he looks good, then that makes me look good as well. So really take the time to just think about how, your strengths as a couple, and then maybe your strengths and weaknesses as an individual, and how you can strengthen together with one another.
Cool. Now, those of you who are listening, pay attention, because we're going to actually take this into a whole nother process. We're going to do session 2 with these guys, and we're going to dig into a little bit more about that entrepreneurship, being married as a couple thing. And I'm going to ask a lot of questions. I already warned them about that. But if you're not married and you can check out right now, that's fine. Go to abundantculture.co. That's abundant.culture.co. And you'll find these guys. They've got a podcast. Go in and listen to their podcast. You'll get some really good stuff. But you can also go to optimizeprofitability.com. Look for episode number 2. You'll find these guys online with us. You'll find some extra stuff, including a free 5-day mini course on wealth. So, hey, that's givers and everything. So come on to optimizeprofitability.com. Check out episode number 2. You'll get that extra course, and you get to hear a lot more from these 2 great guys. Guys, I appreciate you coming on, and I'll see you here in just a few minutes as we get on the next episode.
Thank you.
Thank you.